What to do with dust? We work tirelessly to get rid of it. We sweep it away. We wipe it up. We wash it off. Dust is dirty, something to avoid. We want to clean. We want shiny. We want dust free. Yet here we are today on Ash Wednesday, a day devoted to dust. Remember, you are dust, and to dust you shall return. And if we weren't in the midst of a pandemic, we'd be marking our foreheads with dust, a sign of the cross in black ash to help us in the remembering. This year will be the first in longer than I can remember that my forehead won't bear that ashen cross. At the same time, I feel its imprint more so than ever before. For many of us, this past year has caused us to consider our mortality in ways we'd never imagined having to. The global grief of this pandemic has been palpable through struggles with mental health, loneliness, fatigue and frustration, and through death. Perhaps as we cross the threshold into the season of Lent this year, a season marked by prayer, fasting, and giving, we're feeling like enough is enough. We're feeling like we haven't anything left to give. The thought of letting go of one more anything seems like too much. So what do we do when Jesus asks us, nonetheless, to give, pray, and fast? If this were a normal Ash Wednesday, and we were gathered together in plain sight of one another in our beautiful church, ready to have a big old black cross plastered on our foreheads, now would be the time that I do some verbal gymnastics and talk about the perceived incongruence between actions such as these and the words of Jesus asking us to give, pray, and fast, but to give in a way that others don't know it's happening, to pray behind closed doors, and to keep up with life as usual while we fast. That whole beware of practicing piety before others in order to be seen bit. Only this year, so much has been behind closed doors. So much has been hidden. And all we want to do is fling open the doors and be seen. So today, as we begin this season of Lent, might we consider this time of giving, prayer, and fasting not as a loss or a giving up, but as a reminder of whose we are, to remind us that we belong to our Creator, God the Father, the one who knows us so fully that unto God no secrets can be hidden. A truth that in and of itself can be downright terrifying, because sometimes the things we keep hidden away are messy. And sometimes we try to convince ourselves that we can keep them hidden, even from God. And in doing so, we fill our hearts with things that draw us away from God. We cling to our lives as if they are our own and guard them or flaunt them, or ignore them, or indulge them as we see fit. But the truth of it is, before the Father, who hears in secret, we are laid bare. This isn't something for us to fear, because as we are laid bare, we are at the very same time redeemed and reconciled to God and one another, where our fears, anxieties, egos, vanities, struggles, and triumphs are all caught up in our belonging to God. When able to engage in the imposition of ashes, we mark our foreheads with the sign of the cross, just as we do in baptism with the fragrant oil of chrism. And I've adopted the practice of mixing that very same fragrant oil of chrism with the ash, with dust, a symbol that from beginning to end, there's not a moment that God is not with us. I'm going to share a story about dust. When my son was a little boy, he was about 2 or 3, we got him a sandbox for the yard. And my dad, thinking that he was being helpful, filled it with terracotta colored sand. It looked really pretty. Only as we began to dig and play in the sand, we soon discovered that disturbing it created a fine red dust that covered us from head to toe. My first thought was that the sand had to go. We needed to replace it with regular sandbox sand. But that first time that we finished playing, I looked at my son, smiling up at me from ear to ear, his face covered in red dust. And as the sun hit his face, these little flecks of gold in the dust glistened on his cheeks. And I knew that we would contend with the dust and enjoy the sandbox because of the joy it brought, regardless of the mess it made. Remember, you are dust, and to dust you shall return. As we begin Lent today on Ash Wednesday, a day devoted to dust, we come face to face with our mortality, but we also remember what God has done with dust. The stuff that we work tirelessly to get rid of is the very stuff God has fashioned us from. God can do a whole lot with dust. I'm going to finish up this evening by sharing a poem from Jan Richardson. And while we're not physically being marked with ashes today, my hope is that it will still speak to us. All those days you felt like dust, like dirt, as if all you had to do was turn your face toward the wind and be scattered to the four corners or swept away by the smallest breath as insubstantial. Did you not know what the Holy One can do with dust? This is the day we freely say we are scorched. This is the hour we are marked by what has made it through the burning. This is the moment we ask for the blessing that lives within the ancient ashes that makes its home inside the soil of this sacred earth. So let us be marked, not for sorrow, and let us be marked not for shame. Let us be marked not for false humility or for thinking we are less than we are, but for claiming what God can do within the dust, within the dirt, within the stuff of which the world is made, and the stars that blaze in our bones, and the galaxies that spiral inside the smudge we bear.